angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology, conspiracy, discovery, special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of Skywatch TV.
Some of the anger and hostility that we've seen manifest in America's political scene over the last year or so may actually have been set in motion by the system created by the founders of this country. Welcome to Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert. Today, a special web-exclusive broadcast as we talk with the author of the brand new book, Saboteurs, Skywatch TV CEO Tom Horn.
Tom, good to be with you.
Joining me on the panel, the host of Into the Multiverse, another web exclusive from Skywatch TV, and author of the forthcoming book with me, The Day the Earth Stands Still, Josh Peck.
Thanks for having me back.
And the author of the Red Wing Saga, Book 1, Blood Lies, Book 2, Blood Rights, my best friend, my wife, Sharon K. Gilbert.
Hi, sweetie pie.
We're looking at the supernatural forces behind the political conflict that we've had here in the United States. In Saboteurs, and then in other books Defender Publishing has just released by Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis, The Deeper State, and Carl Gallup's Gods and Thrones, it's pretty clear that there are forces behind the scenes that are really pushing and manipulating the human actors, and what has resulted is the most remarkable political situation we've seen in our lifetimes.
Yeah, absolutely right. In fact, you know, it's an occult tenet, the idea ordo ab chaos, right? Order out of chaos. And of course, a lot of people that study dialectics understand that, you know, what the government wants to do is own you. They accuse the left of this right now, that they want people to be dependent upon them. That's why they want to give them free stuff, because they then become dependent upon them. I would argue that probably both sides of our you know, modern day American government are operating in that way. But this actually did begin with earlier concepts, including those of the Freemasons that out of Europe, the idea that you perpetuate war or something else to make people dependent upon you, right? And this is one of the things I noticed in writing the book Saboteurs, that in doing research, most Americans really are unfamiliar with the earliest developments of this country, you know, who the founders were, what they really believed. We hear this over and over again, even by some Christian writers talking about, you know, how the founders of the country were Christians that were committed to establishing a Christian nation. And that's statistically untrue. I've said this on another program that I thank God we became a Christian nation, at least for a long time, committed to a lot of great Christian ethics and ideas. Even our, you know, our highest universities, most of them, law schools, most of them based on, you know, the ethos of Scripture.
Schools like Harvard that are very liberal today were founded to train preachers of the gospel.
Yes.
That's right, yeah. And so I'm glad that happened. I think that preserved America, and certainly one thing that's represented in the Trump administration is this recommitment to Israel. And I think these are all good things, but obviously there are people that are hostile to those ideas, right? They not only hate Israel, they hate God. They hate the idea of Christianity, and that's why you see growing persecution in our country today. But from the occultic aspect of it, in the book Saboteurs, that's what I'm talking about. I go into the 44 founders, you know, of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, and how they were really committed to Francis Bacon's idea of a new Atlantis. And people don't have to take my word for it. They can read Manly P. Hall, they can read Albert Pike, they can read all of the great writers that were at one time publishing books that were only meant for the eyes of the Freemasons to have access to those, to even be able to read them right. But how they were committed to this scheme the New Atlantis, the idea that, and Manly P. Hall writes quite a bit about this in The Secret Destiny of America. He talks about how the gods of Atlantis, when they were honored by mankind, right? Mankind flourished beneath the pagan gods. When man began to turn their back on the ancient gods and to forget the ancient gods and to forget the ancient ways, they fell into displeasure. Atlantis sinks beneath the ocean. So his idea was writing a novel, but that behind that novel, it was really a worldview. In fact, Sharon's new novels, Blood Rights and Blood Lies. Behind that, though, is true historic supernaturalism.
Absolutely. It's all about spiritual warfare. And it's funny that you bring up the idea of the New Atlantis and the founding of America, because recently on Fox TV, the show just ended, but for 3 seasons we watched Sleepy Hollow and watched Ichabod Crane prove that the Freemasons and witches were the real founders of America.
But they were the good guys.
At what point in history, when you and I were kids, would a show like that have gotten off the ground?
Right.
Now it's all over the place, and that's what our kids are being taught. That somehow white magic is what founded the United States, and it's good.
Right.
Now, how does that get reflected in things like the Constitution and Bill of Rights and everything? Because, when we look at those, they seem Christian in nature. We have the right to freedom of speech, bear arms so we can protect ourselves. It seems... somebody would think that those seem like Christian values. How did things like that happen?
Well, again, the New Atlantis was an idea of a special kind of democracy that would certainly protect the rights of people to free speech. And don't forget that most of these founders, the Freemasons, were also deists.
Right.
The idea that there was a creator at one point and he made everything and then he just moved on, right? He doesn't interact with us anymore. There's nothing personal about it. But that design is in the cosmos, and that there was a creator who made everything and then set it into motion. But some of the Freemasons also had ideas that were born out of Rosicrucianism. And of course, if you read, like George Washington's own pastor talked about him like a sly fox, right?
Right.
Knowing that to have the political goodwill of the population, many of whom were Christians, you had to speak their language, you had to be nice to them, right? You had to do those things. And I don't think by the way, not all 44 Freemasons were dedicated to an occult idea. It just happened to be what was popular at the time. It was coming out of Europe, right? In the former program, you talked about Helena Blavatsky. Those were popular ideas at the time. They were they were going crazy with this new kind of spirituality, right?
Yeah. So is it that what we're dealing with now between the right and the left, or really maybe not even that, but to say that the Christians and the non-Christians in value in America, is that born from things they were dealing with back at the founding of the country?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I mean, if it was, we have Freemasons, but they also have to kind of deal with the Christians that were there too. So there was a little bit of the back and forth there. Is that why we're dealing with the animosity now?
Look, I would say that to some extent the Freemasons have an appreciation for a lot of the ideas that are historically related to Christianity. If you go into the House of the Temple, the headquarters of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry, in Washington, D.C., and you go up into the temple room on the 3rd floor, there's a great big altar there. And it's got all these different holy books. It's got the Quran, but it's also got the Bible. So it's the way they would put all of that together is that within religion, there are a lot of great ideas to aspire to. It makes us better people. But we as Christians believe that there's a certain exclusivity to salvation, right? And there's not many roads. That's a Freemason idea. That's a New Age idea. But there were the hardcore Freemasons, and they were the ones that insisted on even the way the capital city was laid out. Was based on an Atlantean plan that was also connected to the Cumaean Sibyl, the most powerful of Apollo's Sibyls, who had predicted that at the end of times, the Greeks believed in the 4 cycles, the Iron Age, the Silver Age, but the Iron Age is going to cease and give birth to a new golden pagan age when Apollo returns to the earth. Well, that's the prophecy on the Great Seal of the United States. And the interesting thing about the way they did this was they blended Greek and Egyptian beliefs. And you can find in history where there are scholars who say that the Egyptians created the god Osiris. The Greeks borrowed from some of those ideas and incorporated it into the god Apollo, right? And that's why if you look at the Great Seal, the symbolism is all Egyptian, the uncapped pyramid, the all-seeing eye, all that. But the mottos are in Greek and from the prophecies of the return of Apollo.
Right.
So that's the two-headed eagle. It's the blending of these two ideas, but they're both talking about the same entity.
The idea of successive kingdoms, that we have the golden age that gives rise to the silver, the bronze, and on down to the iron, and sort of an iron mixed with clay. That's also biblical in scope. But I would say this idea of order out of chaos, it's a return of the chaos dragon.
Yeah.
Which
Now
you
there's
write
a whole
about
other
a
there's a whole
lot.
other big topic.
You cannot
Yeah.
get to the golden age unless the chaos dragon rises again.
Because you've got to destroy the Iron Age in order to bring back the Golden Age, and that again to the Cumaean Sibyl, the translation by Virgil, I think it was, the Latin poet, said that wrote that it returns old Saturn's reign.
Right.
Yes.
Saturn was the Roman form of the Greek god Kronos, who, according to the Greek poet Hesiod, who wrote like in the 7th century BC. We get a lot of what we know about Greek mythology from Hesiod, and that was the Golden Age when the men of the Golden Age, and the Greek phrase was meropes anthropoi, were who lived. They were the heroes of that age, and from them, when they died, came the spirits called the daemons, demons. Except that in the Greek religion, Greek cosmology, they were helpful spirits who aided and abetted mankind and helped us to thrive and heal diseases and all sorts of other things. It was a total reversal of Jewish, or, well, biblical cosmology, let's put it that way, where the men of the Golden Age, ruled over by Kronos, king of the Titans, who was punished by being sent to Tartarus, like the angels who sinned in 2 Peter 2:4, those were the Nephilim. So what they're trying to bring back, or what the Cumaean Sibyl, and then those who are trying to make that prophecy, fulfill that prophecy, are trying to do is bring back the age of the Nephilim.
They're trying to open the abyss.
And bring back the Watchers, who are Dr. Michael Heiser would argue that the Watchers are what come out of the abyss in Revelation 9:11.
Right. Well, and again, the Cumaean Sibyl's prophecy that's, encodified here on our Great Seal, she refers to that age when gods and men will be commingled.
Right.
Again, right? This is exactly what the Watchers did.
Right, Return of the Nephilim. It's astonishing that there's such the pieces between Greek mythology and biblical theology fit together so well. And secular scholars have picked up on these pieces. I wrote about it in The Great Inception, a scholar from Estonia named Amar Anus, who traced the etymology of this meropes anthropoi and found out that, well, that's where that comes from the same root word as the biblical name, the Rephaim, who were the shades who rise up to greet Lucifer when he's kicked out of Eden. Right. The kings of old. They are the Nephilim. The Rephaim are the Nephilim.
And this idea that the aliens that you and Josh write about in your new book, The Day the Earth Stands Still, that it may not be entities coming from another galaxy or another exoplanet. It may be from another dimension. Therefore, this idea that something coming through a portal is good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and in one of the broadcast programs, when we talk about the WikiLeaks, their term "contiguous aliens" reflects this idea that they're not coming here from Zeta Reticuli in a clunky little spaceship, right? They're all around us all the time.
Yeah, they see them as parallel universes, and actually, they even say that there are what they call celestials, which is an interesting term, in biblical cosmology. But they call them celestials. But those are the bad guys from other planets. Those are the guys that haven't evolved into obedience to God, which is weird language, but yeah.
But there was a time in antiquity when this was considered, everybody knew it.
Yeah.
Everybody understood what the Lamassu were and what the Cherubim were, and they understood that there were beings that not everybody could see, but they were all around us. We've lost touch with that.
Well, that's why in the programs, right?
I set you
That's
up
why
for that.
we're giving these away
Yes.
free,
Yeah.
right, with the Saboteurs package, because both of these books, especially the one, The Devils and Evil Spirits of Babylonia, which is what the Collins Elite. Maybe in our next webcast we should tell people who the Collins Elite
Oh,
are.
we should.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the Fallen Angels and the Heroes of Mythology. Deluxe, hardback, can't get them anywhere else, and your library is not complete unless you have them.
And stuff like that is what I have used for source material in writing the Red Wing Saga, because I want to understand what the scholars of the time, what they believed.
Yeah, and those books both published late 18th, early 19th
Yeah.
century.
Right.
So this is bringing back stuff that's more or less been out of print for almost a full century.
Yes.
So yeah, phenomenal stuff. We're going to stop at this point because we could continue on for another hour or so on this topic, but rather than give it all to you in one chunk, we're going to be rolling these out over the course of the entire month on a daily basis just about. So we're going to stop at this point and come back tomorrow as we continue our discussion about the new book, Saboteurs by Tom Horn, with our panel, Tom Horn, Josh Peck, Sharon K. Gilbert. I'm Derek Gilbert. We thank you for watching as we keep watch. This is Skywatch TV.
The Trump administration is now vowing to crack down and punish deep state saboteurs.
Today, America is being manipulated through a Washington-based shadow government.
This is a war now, the deep state against you and the President of the United States.
The artificial chaos engineered by elites and advanced by enemies of democracy is being propagandized by a devoted media machine to take down President Trump.
I submit to you that the establishment that you talk about, the so-called deep state, exists on both sides, the left and the right, and President Trump is up against both of them.
But this is not the whole story. A much more sinister quest behind the deep state is at work to usher in a final world order.
He's an outsider. He's not them. He's not part of the club. You know, he hasn't been through the initiation rites. He didn't belong to the secret society. He didn't belong to the secret society. The secret society.
They're trying to cheat you out of the future and the future that you want. They're trying to cheat you out of the leadership you want.
Globalists, secret societies, and world power brokers anticipate the insidious arrival of a messianic strongman they call the Gray Champion. Now, for the first time ever, expert on occultism and best-selling author Dr. Thomas Horn joins a senior analyst from the Pentagon and a retired police detective to bring you the shocking truth behind an ancient cabal, almost too fantastic to believe.
If these forces are successful, this country will not survive.
They have a plan for your future, but you can know their secret and stop them in their tracks. Get ready, Saboteurs, how secret deep state occultists are manipulating American society toward a final world order.
America is being manipulated by sinister occult forces and a Washington-based shadow government. But now, for the first time ever, expert on occultism and best-selling author Dr. Thomas Horn is joined by senior analyst from the Pentagon, Colonel Bob McGinnis, and retired police detective Carl Gallups to expose these nefarious forces. Skywatch TV is proud to announce the Saboteurs Collection. When you order the new books, Saboteurs, Gods and Thrones, and The Deeper State from Skywatch TV, you'll also receive free of charge for a limited time the exclusive oversized hardback collector editions of the classic 2-volume set, The Devils and Evil Spirits of Babylonia, and The Fallen Angels and the Heroes of Mythology. These two timeless masterpieces, finally in print again after 100 years, are the perfect gift for the scholar or Bible student in your life, and hold a retail value of over $60 all by themselves, but are included absolutely free when you purchase the limited time Saboteurs collection. But that's not all. You'll also receive the never-before-aired DVD Off the Record, featuring exclusive interviews with Dr. Thomas Horn, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, and Detective Carl Gallups, further exposing the dark secrets of globalist elites and how to stop them in their tracks. This content is only available in this exclusive offer and will not be aired anywhere else. Finally, you'll also receive The Shadow Hand, the over 24-hour Steve Quayle and Tom Horn definitive audio series on CD. This audio collection discloses the terrifying truth behind the infamous WikiLeaks dumps, the shadow government, and so much more. This unprecedented special offer sold separately holds a retail value of over $175. Yours now for only $29.99 plus shipping and handling. The holiday gift season is coming, and you won't find this collection anywhere else. So don't delay. Order the Saboteurs collection for somebody you love now at skywatchtvstore.com or call 1-844-750-4985.
Angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology. Conspiracy. Discovery. Special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of Skywatch TV.
When I was a kid, I had a fascination with maps, loved maps, used to study the street map of Chicago for hours at a time. I was kind of a lonely kid. Welcome to Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert. But there's a point to this, and that is that the very layout of our nation's capital may have more to do with the efficient movement of people and goods from place to place, and more to do with the power, the supernatural power that it gives those who actually occupy the buildings of government. Joining me on the panel as we continue our discussion about the release of the new book, Saboteurs and the Supernatural Power Behind Them. The new book by Tom Horn is, of course, the author of the book, Tom Horn.
Good to be with you.
The host of Into the Multiverse on Skywatch TV, Josh Peck.
Thanks for having me back.
And the co-host of My Life and author of the new novels, The Red Wing Saga, Blood, Lies, and Blood Rights, Sharon K. Gilbert.
Hi, sweetie pie.
We're talking about the spiritual war behind the geopolitical fight that has been ongoing, not just here in Washington, D.C., but all around the world. We've seen the rise of various political movements in Spain. The Catalonia region on the border with France is trying to secede and become its own country. The rise of nationalist movements in reaction to globalist movements in Europe and here in the United States. But this sort of fighting has been going on since the beginning of time. We even saw it in, here's an example. Back when there were only like 3 ways the world could be divided, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham, who was the youngest, decided he was going to take his own share from his other 2 brothers by, exposing his father's nakedness, which is a euphemism for incest with his mother. But by becoming the top dog, and that's, there are other examples in the Bible where that happens, by the way. David's son Absalom did it. But it's like a dog marking his territory, not to be too graphic about it. But so this sort of political fighting with the spiritual forces behind it has been ongoing since the beginning of time. We talked about the Freemasons, and maybe you can summarize again, Tom, how Washington, D.C., under the influence of Freemasonry, was set up to bring forth some sort of spiritual entity, the return of Apollo.
Right. So, what's interesting is I'm listening to you right now, and you're talking about, what Noah's kid tried to do, right? And some of the other examples from the Bible. But how closely related to that is it to the sex magic that we talked about on some of the other programs?
Well, that's a good point. I never thought of it that way.
And,
Yeah.
and the layout of Washington, D.C. The whole
Yeah.
idea is to create a generator that brings about the incarnation or the resurrection. It draws the seed,
Yeah.
the seed of the underworld entity up through the base of the obelisk, right? It's all about sex magic. It's all about procreation.
Well, that's what Og's bed was all about.
It's Og's bed, right?
Yes,
You know,
yes.
that makes sense too, because Noah cursed Canaan and not Ham. You know,
Yes.
he cursed the seed that came from that unholy union.
You know, and interestingly, the Amorites were one of the children of Canaan.
You're right, right.
And the Amorites that I've argued in a couple of presentations I've given, and I'm going to have to put this into a book, are the people that really manifested the opposition to God's chosen people in the Holy Land. They were the ones who believed that they were descended from the Datanu, who that Estonian scholar I mentioned earlier, in that same article, which is just, it's a mind-blowing article once you finally figure out what he's trying to say, traced the etymology of that word and said, oh yeah, this ancient Amorite tribe from which the great Amorite kings of the ancient world, Hammurabi the Great, who lived at the time of Jacob, and the Ugaritic kings who were around during the time of the Judges, traced their ancestry back to this one tribe. The Datanu is the name from which the Greeks got the name of their old gods, the Titans.
Yes.
So they believed that they were performing these rituals. In fact, I just found an article today on that necromancy ritual for the last king of the city-state of Ugara. We summon thee, O council of the Titans.
That's right.
Trying
The
to bring
format-
back the Rephaim.
And we summon thee, O Rephaim of the earth, to bless the king. But the format of that ritual is exactly the same as a genealogical list, and this is how scholars have interpreted it anyway. Oh, this is just the genealogy of Hammurabi and his ancestors. The format is the same, though. They were summoning these old dead kings, the Rephaim, the Nephilim, to bless the new king of Babylon, which is the Amorites. So again, the Amorites descended from Canaan, cursed by Noah, because Canaan was apparently the product of this unholy union between Ham and his own mother.
Yeah.
So were they calling a meeting in the infernal council?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
And in this ritual, the sun god, which in Canaanite was Shamash, a female, and in the older Babylonian religion, she was male.
Shamash.
Yes, Shamash, would go down to the underworld, accompanied by the Rephaim of Baal, in fact.
Right. Well, and that language is carried over into the Old Testament, where it refers to the Rapha, squirming beneath the surface of the earth, right? And that's Amorite idea. So the interesting thing is, some might say, well, the Old Testament is borrowing from Amorite theology, where in this case I'm saying, no, it's that what they were trying to do is real. That these entities are in the underworld. They form some kind of an acolyte assembly of lower or lesser gods or whatever under the Baal, right? And there does seem to be some indication that there had some methodology, if not in physical form, at least spiritually. They had some capacity for bringing them back up. But it was always sex magic. So you mentioned Og's bed, right? We know that an identical bed was found at Edamananki, right?
Yes.
At the Tower of Babel. And that it was used, who was the god?
Marduk.
Yeah.
It was the temple of Marduk in Babylon. He would come there for the annual Akitu festival for the new year with his consort goddess to have ritual sex.
They would have ritual sex. But so think about all of Israel, though, are commanded to be circumcised. Why? Because the whole act of creation is the nearest thing man can be with God. But with the children of Israel, this had to be part of a covenant. It was a covenant relationship with God, right? So I think in the modern times, we don't really comprehend or even value or respect or whatever the term might be, this idea of the vows of marriage. And what that means to God is kind of lost in today's, hookup culture, right? And people just don't get it. But back to Washington, D.C. It's the world's largest sexual organs, right,
Yes.
on display for the very purpose of bringing about the resurrection of Osiris, or who the Greeks would call Apollo. And that's not just my opinion. Anybody that wants to confirm this can go to our U.S. Government Library of Congress website and click on the article called The Most Approved Plan. And the whole article talks about how Washington and Jefferson and the rest of them advertised an engineering contest. And it was not just for people that were living here in early America, but around the world, French designers, whoever. Whoever created the best layout of the U.S. capital city was going to win a bunch of engineering contracts and all that, and the city was going to be based on that, right? But at the end of the day, if you read this article on the Library of Congress website, it says that Washington and Jefferson, and it says Jefferson especially, rejected every idea that came out for one reason, and that is that Thomas Jefferson wanted the U.S. capital city laid out based on two things. One, the old Roman pantheon, and secondly, to be dedicated to all pagan gods. It actually says that. So then, when you see that, then everything else in Washington makes sense.
Right.
The layout, why the dome is there, and why it's even laid out in the Washington Mall.
Right.
If you look down even at the architecture of the Jefferson Memorial, right, you can see that ancient pagan architecture, and then you see the giant obelisk, Osiris's missing organ, and then you look up here to the U.S. Capitol Dome, which has all the Roman kind of feel to it, right? But the belly of Isis, right, that is there.
And then on the inside, you've got the painting of the apotheosis of George Washington.
Yeah. So again, in fact, I would tell people, if you've never done this, go to Washington D.C. sometime, and you can take the free tour of the U.S. Capitol Dome. You can go inside and look up. And it is rich with Freemasonic and occultic symbolism.
Yeah, there's even, 70 or 72 pentagrams?
There's 72 pentagrams.
Yeah.
But so up in the underbelly of Isis is the apotheosis. That's what it's officially called. Brumidi's famous painting, The Apotheosis of George Washington, which means to become a god. Well, two things. One, look at the heaven that he's rising into, because these are all Greek and Roman pagan gods and demons. Including who's the god that
Vulcan.
Vulcan, that Manly P. Hall says fills the Freemasons' hands with the seething energies of Lucifer. But what god is he becoming? Well, all of the writers of the 1900s, they said he's becoming Osiris. This is the belief system in Freemasonry, of which Washington was
Well, elsewhere in the city, within the Smithsonian, you have the statue of Washington as Zeus. And elsewhere, also atop a large pillar, you have Washington driving Helios's four horses.
Right. In fact, one of the original plans for the Washington Monument, the big obelisk, was going to have Apollo driving the horses, out in front of the actual male organ of Osiris there, anyway. So, but another thing that most Americans don't know is that the ancient Egyptian practice, whenever a new pharaoh was going to become king, there was a festival called Opet, and they would put him on a little barge and take him up the Nile River. And as he's going up the Nile River, the laity are walking on both sides of the Nile River, and they're celebrating, but they're conducting a play based on Isis and Osiris, right? Because she finds his parts in the Nile River. So they're going along, I found another part. They're playing out this thing, right? But when he gets to Karnak, the temple of Amun-Ra, he goes inside the domed belly of Isis, and as he's standing there looking at the obelisk on the outside of Osiris, the Egyptian magicians, and according to the book of Exodus, these guys had very strong supernatural power. This is another thing we should maybe talk about on one of these webcasts is this all just a bunch of hooey? Is it magic tricks that they're playing? Or can people actually achieve a certain level of supernatural power and authority, which could include the ability to be able to move objects and that kind of thing? But is it a spirit that's actually moving it because they've put themselves into contact? Anyway, these Egyptian magicians conduct the raising of Osiris ceremony And the idea is that the spirit of Osiris, the seed of Osiris, is drawn up through the base of the obelisk. It magically emits into the belly of Isis. And he is standing inside there, and then he's the one that's transmogrified. He becomes a living God.
So, something that occurred to me while we were doing the panel discussion at the True Legends Conference. Let's go back to the whole necromancy ritual at Ugarit to bless the new king, summoning the Rephaim and the Titans and all that. There's a ritual that is done, or a ceremony that takes place during the inauguration of every American president by the Freemasons. So let's kind of close out this broadcast with that, because I think it's interesting that we're looking back, 30, more than 3,000 years, and seeing a parallel in what goes on in Washington, D.C. when we bring a new president and welcome him to office.
Well, that's exactly right. Exactly what the Egyptians did. The Freemasons claim that they still possess the exact incantations that were conducted. There's been this idea for the longest time: how do the Rephaim come back? How do the giants come back?
Right.
And one of the theories, the Book of Jubilees, right? Noah's grandson, he finds the secrets of the Watchers, which they wrote down. They carved them into a mountain before the flood.
Yeah.
Right, and after the waters go down, he finds it, and it says he transcribes it. He writes it all down and sins
according to it.
Yeah, wouldn't let Noah know. But so there are those from the mystery schools and Rosicrucians and all that say that magic is still in possession today by the modern Egyptian magicians, the Freemasons and others. So what do they do at the inauguration of every American president? They repeat the same thing the Egyptians did. As the U.S. president is standing in the dome beneath the first Osiris, American Osiris, Washington, with the 72 pentagrams above his head, which bind the 72 cosmo craters, right? People need to get Derek Gilbert's book, The Great Inception, if they want to understand the significance of the number 72 and even what Jesus did to reverse that curse.
Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating that, again, we think that we're so enlightened and scientific in our modern world that reason has won out over superstition and the age of magic, when in fact the ones who are pulling the levers of power behind the scenes are in fact trying to perform these kinds of workings.
Yeah, there are people who believe that that's the true power center in Washington, D.C. It's not the White House. It's the headquarters of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. And when you go inside, like I have, I've been in every part of it. I went up to the Hall of Charity and walked inside and seen where the Bush family has given literally millions and millions of dollars to propagate Scottish Rite Freemasonry. You got to wonder if indeed they're not the ones that are pulling the levers. But anyway, point is, during the inauguration of the president, standing in the belly of Isis with all that mysticism around him, facing the obelisk in the Washington Mall across town, just a couple of blocks from the White House, the modern Egyptian magicians, the Freemasons, are conducting the raising of Osiris ceremony. Now they're doing that. You might call that like a parody or something, right? But they're doing it in anticipation of the day when that spirit really is going to rise up and take its place in who we would call the Antichrist. Now, why Christians ought to pay attention to this is because in two places in the New Testament, in the book of Revelation, in the book of Revelation and also in 2 Thessalonians, Paul says the Antichrist will be the son of perdition, the son of Apollyon, Apollo. And then in Revelation 17:8, the beast will rise up out of the bottomless pit and go into Apollyon. And so they're trying to make that happen. That's the scary part about this, is that behind these saboteurs, there are some deeply occultic and probably very influential members of the Washington elite that are looking forward to the dawn of a new golden pagan age.
The next installment, we need to talk more about the Collins elite and the old bloodlines.
Yes, that's a good point. I think we'll cut here because I think we've basically made the point that there's more to the saboteurs than just community organizing. The book by Tom Horn, Saboteurs, and we encourage you to keep watch on the Skywatch TV web exclusive programs. You'll find those listed and linked at skywatchtv.com, but also on our other delivery mechanisms, the Skywatch TV channels on Roku and Apple TV, and of course the Skywatch TV mobile app as well throughout the month of October, along with the release of Saboteurs, The Deeper State, and Gods and Thrones. We'll be doing more programs like this, and we'll also talk more about magic and how real it is and what sort of power does it convey to those who practice it. Just some more of the programs you can watch for from Skywatch TV. With Tom Horn, Josh Peck, Sharon K. Gilbert, I'm Derek Gilbert, and we thank you for watching as we keep watch. This is Skywatch TV.
The Trump administration is now vowing to crack down and punish deep state saboteurs.
Today, America is being manipulated through a Washington-based shadow government.
This is a war now, the deep state against you and the President of the United States.
The artificial chaos engineered by elites and advanced by enemies of democracy is being propagandized by a devoted media machine to take down President Trump.
I submit to you that the establishment that you talk about, the so-called deep state, exists on both sides, the left and the right, and President Trump is up against both of them.
But this is not the whole story. A much more sinister quest behind the deep state is at work to usher in a final world order.
He's an outsider. He's not them. He's not part of the club. He hasn't been through the initiation rites. He didn't belong to the secret society. He didn't belong to the secret society. The secret society.
They're trying to cheat you out of the future and the future that you want. They're trying to cheat you out of the leadership you want.
Globalists, secret societies, and world power brokers anticipate the insidious arrival of a messianic strongman they call the Gray Champion. Now, for the first time ever, expert on occultism and best-selling author Dr. Thomas Horn joins a senior analyst from the Pentagon and a retired police detective to bring you the shocking truth behind an ancient cabal, almost too fantastic to believe.
If these forces are successful, this country will not survive.
They have a plan for your future, but you can know their secret and stop them in their tracks. Get ready, Saboteurs, how secret deep state occultists are manipulating American society toward a final world order.
America is being manipulated by sinister occult forces and a Washington-based shadow government. But now, for the first time ever, expert on occultism and best-selling author Dr. Thomas Horn is joined by senior analyst from the Pentagon, Colonel Bob McGinnis, and retired police detective Carl Gallups to expose these nefarious forces. Skywatch TV is proud to announce the Saboteurs collection. When you order the new books, Saboteurs, Gods and Thrones, and The Deeper State from Skywatch TV, you'll also receive free of charge for a limited time the exclusive oversized hardback collector editions of the classic 2-volume set, The Devils and Evil Spirits of Babylonia, and The Fallen Angels and the Heroes of Mythology. These two timeless masterpieces, finally in print again after 100 years, are the perfect gift for the scholar or Bible student in your life, and hold a retail value of over $60 all by themselves, but are included absolutely free when you purchase the limited time Saboteurs collection. But that's not all. You'll also receive the never-before-aired DVD Off the Record, featuring exclusive interviews with Dr. Thomas Horn, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, and Detective Carl Gallups, further exposing the dark secrets of globalist elites and how to stop them in their tracks. This content is only available in this exclusive offer and will not be aired anywhere else. Finally, you'll also receive The Shadow Hand, the over 24-hour Steve Quayle and Tom Horn definitive audio series on CD. This audio collection discloses the terrifying truth behind the infamous WikiLeaks dumps, the shadow government, and so much more. This unprecedented special offer sold separately holds a retail value of over $175. Yours now for only $29.99 plus shipping and handling. The holiday gift season is coming, and you won't find this collection anywhere else. So don't delay. Order the Saboteurs collection for somebody you love now at skywatchtvstore.com or call 1-844-750-4985.